Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity. Oh dear, what a week that was. From organic portals posing as a living soul. But then it dawned on me, it's better that than being exposed as a swamp-filled bot, I suppose. And I also got an invitation to a show called Vaginal Steaming. Yes, you heard that right. And yes, the world is officially going doolally or unsane. And we'll be covering some old ground tonight. There are chunks of intel. And yes, more issues to do with the state and country groups that we will be addressing. There is a lot going on in and out of the group currently, which will get covered tonight. And right, welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity. It appears that we are the only show that is accountable, as evidenced by my willingness to go on a no-holds-bar show, first with Alan and then with Randy, and also with Richard Hoagland's show. But apparently THI is not accountable, and I showed the financial records of the People's Club. I showed my earnings on the Patreon until some people made an issue of it, and yet no other group does that. Is that not being accountable? Now apparently now also an apology is no longer an apology if I say it. Okay. That was in relation to last week. It wasn't accepted. Oh well. There's a conference starting this week, and with all the alt media clowns and agents in it, and they're charging $111 to listen from your own home. $111. I couldn't be bothered checking the cost of the live event tickets. But $111 for an in-home podcast to disclose what we already know. They're not disclosing anything, just harvesting people's energy and also bank balances. But where are the internet warriors who attack me and our group for those people? One has to ask. They'll completely ignore these fraudsters. Why? Because they're part of them is why. Fake saviour programs. And it's something that humanity has embraced all too easily, which we'll get into later. And yet we're the only show that has a question and answer section most weeks, even allowing that some members don't like that section because of the levels and some of the intentions behind the questions. And yet we are accused of not answering questions. People ask me questions on MeWe and Facebook during the week. It's like a full-on Q&A sometimes, and I answer most of them. But we still get accused of not answering questions. You know, we're the only group now in league with Randy's Off Planet Radio and Alan's Circle of White Light show that encourages members to self-empower, create their own leaders, make their own decisions, develop your own projects and ideas, and ask for everyone to speak and have their say. And yet some say this is a cult. It's my way or the highway. Do these people actually listen to themselves? But this is all these people have. You know, we've had to, myself, Ramona and Holly have had to deal with this all week. And the previous week, going all the way back to May. They just throw unsubstantiated barbs that have no basis of fact, because they're mired in their own darkness, and hate the fact that this show alone is accountable. This show does encourage growth in all people. The show is not ego-based like many others. The show encourages community and also unity, backed with a powerful knowledge for people to be sovereign, not demand it. This show does many things the right way, and those hell-bent on staying in their old slavery suit and system. They haven't noticed yet that along with their masks, it no longer works too well. In fact, in some cases, not at all. They can't handle that fact. Now, I warned this year the two worlds would get wider, and I suspect many of you are now seeing that being evidenced. The reality is most are just not ready for a new and better world. Is it sad? Yes, absolutely. It pains me to see so many lost in their own illusion and delusion. We've tried hard with many, but some fall due to their propensity to externalise things and fail to internalise things. This has and will be their downfall. More so now, between now and the end of this year. It is unfolding. Now, sadly, some members were removed over this past week. All displayed poor behaviour and actions conducive to keeping the old system and not creating a new one. Again, expect to see more of this, as it has been a common occurrence in the past for humanity. Ignore the teachers, ignore the signs, ignore their own failings and project it onto others, and in particular against those who did do their work. Now, for those of you who are not on the Facebook or me, we've had a number of issues again this past week that ended up with a tag team disrupting 5 separate groups, leading to much discord, upset and negativity. Me personally, I know why it was done. It was a deliberate tactic to disrupt the people and those groups, the majority of which were connected to one group, who have caused issues in the past and shows no accountability for their actions or behaviour, either within the group or their leader. Often in the chaos, most overlook where it all started from. That gets lost in the barbs that go to and fro, and the gist of it was one former member wanted to railroad her opinions onto me and other group members. You know, you either believe it or you don't. You can't force anyone into believing what you believe. That's what I say about this show. You know, if there's parts that don't resonate, fine. You know. Now, she believed that Trump is a pedo and railed at me and Randy and others for not believing her narrative. But like I've said previously, no one knows unless you were there as a victim or an accomplice. None of us know. But Trump is or is not a pedo was never the issue. It could have been any subject. This is what these type of people do. Anything to disrupt. And then in came harbingers of division to support her and their anti-communal effort. And the stage was set, the fuse got lit, and despite several attempts at reasoning, those 3 involved got what they wanted. Discord amongst the groups, which led to a few being removed. This was orchestrated, make no mistake. Why would anyone start an argument over a fact that no one can prove 100% either way? When even proving he is or he isn't doesn't alter our lives one iota. And this is what's lost with these divisive, low vibrational, non-thinking people. It actually solves nothing. This will become all too clear later on in the show. But sadly, yet again, it was 3 females involved, with a 4th hiding in the wings, orchestrating it. Yes, we know. And sadly, that's all become too familiar. The e-book issues we had recently, all females again. MeWe this week, female again. And several other issues I could cite, even going back into Cosmic Voice and Universal Voice. You know, this disappoints me more than dick swinging men. this is not the example the female archetype should be set in anyone's book. But I'm wondering, maybe I'm the problem. Perhaps I set the bar too high for female role models. Let me know if I am. If I've set the bar too high. Or just maybe the general female archetype has gone so far down it's barely recognisable anymore. I find it beyond sad. You know, the positive female reactions to my feminism piece last year gave me much joy, and suggests many of you are all aware of the problem. But the question arises, when will it be fixed? And this is something that we all have to work towards. I'm not in particular picking out females, I want to make that quite clear. But there's an ongoing problem. And like I said, maybe I set the bar too high for females. I don't know. Another question arose about the THI groups, but of course we don't answer questions, they say, of why I was asking for skill sets for people in the THI groups. So I will set the record straight as to why. But oh, the irony of those who ask that question. You know, they splatter, we all do, we splatter our whole lives across social media, but someone asks them for skill sets for the projects, and somehow, as was suggested by a number of people, that this was all very sinister and suspicious. So here is the reason why. Skill sets are asked not for my benefit, because I won't be receiving any of them, but for the people's benefit of each state or country group. What I would like is all members in that group to find a project where all in that state are active within the one project. Why? Because this encourages a good use of the funds. Instead of doing multiple personal projects, why not all come up with a project and fit all of your skill sets of all the people in the group into the one project, whereby you all then continue to work together. And it allows group members to all be involved and paid within that project, and obviously promotes far more teamwork than the individual projects. As an example, say we have 10 members in the group, they all propose one project each and request $500,000, let's say, each, so we got a total of $5 million. But what happens if 10 members propose one project for $5 million? Which is the better project or proposal? The one project is why. And the reason why is because you will all then continue to work together and get more done in that vein is why. The groups are about us all working together, not on an individual basis. That is the old way. It's not the new way. The old way failed on every level. So the gist of why I asked for the skill sets is I was looking after all of our members first, and yet somehow that is now being considered as sinister or wrong. It literally beggars belief. Asking for skill sets is data mining, I was accused of. Except I didn't get the data. But these same people who question that are the same people who have bought Alexa type machines or home security systems that record everything in your home, or use online banking with a phone, or buy things off the phone. But suddenly someone asking for something that will make best use of the funds and increase the team to all work together, apparently now that's suspicious. It's a very warped mindset and a lack of thinking. For those that don't know, I do not participate in any country or state group. I joined one group only, which was to monitor a few people within that group. I don't pick leaders, admins, calls, or have anything to do what goes on in the said Zoom calls within those groups or states or countries. Neither do I pick or delete members for those groups. My role in it was laying down a few basic guidelines, and that's it. The idea was for you all to work together without my input on behalf of your state or country. And this is where you all get to discuss your proposals and your projects, not with Kim or I, as we just don't have the time. Plus, it's not our role. Our role is to get the funding out. Your role is to create the projects between you. And again, it's not very cult-like, is it? So I do not participate in any of the groups. Madeline Thomas of the THI Italy group was right in a wrong way. I don't command any of those groups. And this is what these people don't get. They're not destroying or damaging me, far from it. They are doing this to you all that participate in those groups. They're not my groups. They're yours. Your state or your country they are damaging. And that's all they're doing, trying to damage the people's groups of your own self-empowerment and coming together. Nice people. So subsequently, THI Italy has now been dropped from our database altogether. The people in that group came to destroy it. Madeline Thomas, Troy Meggle, Marilyn Yatain, Lacey and others, and people so cowardly they hide behind fake names. You see, these people think they're getting at me. They're not. Less groups makes my life a whole lot easier. So it matters not one iota to me whether we have a THI Italy or not. The group in Italy was for the benefit of the people of Italy, not me. For them to create projects and ideas and come together with a common goal. My role is the People's Club America. That's it, not globally. So it matters not for me. It's all sad, you know, and what they're doing is destroying people coming together, like the same one or two that in THI Australia did. It's childlike behaviour, you know. Old women in the late 60s or early 70s displaying behaviour. There's not only childlike in the extreme, it's cabal behaviour at its finest. Spending all day trying to stop you, the people joining and working together. Like I said, they think they're stopping me, they're not. Essentially, they block the people of Italy having an opportunity to be a part of fixing the planet and their country. Oops. So to the few who complained the week before last that I was a bit harsh in apportioning blame to we the people, these people are your answer to that question or statement. Who needs cabal when you have parasites like these? And like I've said all along, time always tells, was Thomas right or them? Well, there you have it. And this is why we should all fight hard and support each other. We are all we have. They fight to destroy us, and we must fight to protect not my group, but your group. And this is what these people don't get, and never will. THI Germany. Yes, I'm aware of the issues. The leader and the admins of that group have 1 week to address concerns amicably with several members in that group, and also add Alan James in as an admin only. Should it not be addressed within a week, THI Germany will be closed down like THI Italy and removed from the database, and subsequently the funding when it comes out, and we will set up a new one for those who will act in the right manner. And just when you think he's finished, no, on to THI Canada. And a message to THI Canada. This is what I've been warning about for a number of years now. The attacks are not just on me, they are on all that are involved in THI. They don't like what we're doing. They don't like harmony. They don't like people coming together and sharing better ideas and better goals. And this is why I warn of the trolls and the shills, and also the possibility of psychic, mind control, jinn and dark magician games. And yes, they do use them. And this is how and why I produced the documents on grounding, centering and shielding, plus how to stop psychic attacks. They are all there for all of you and your own benefit. Please use them. They're on the website thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. But Canada is a different ball game of interference. Canada is a hotbed of clowns, and always has been. And the mind control techniques up there are thick and heavy. Don't underestimate it. Canada is laden with alt media program members. So what do you mean by that? By program members, I mean they were used in mind control experiments, usually involving military, SSP, bloodline families, or what is known as the Green Project, whereby people are essentially mind control bots, and most of them are unaware they're being operated. I had one particular Canadian mind control program member state today that she denied who her husband was. That person's been replaced. Doesn't remember. That was in Canada as well. There's a plethora of these type of alt media program members, and most of them largely are attendees on the Alfred Weber show. This will give you a clue to some of them, and some of them are also interconnected to Marilee Niatane and the Service to Self group, Soul Tribe Sanctuary, which is one of several witches groups connected globally and particularly to the Vancouver region. Now, Vancouver itself is a hotbed of many of the world's ills right now, as Kevin Annett will attest to, and has a high percentage of alt media game players. Now, for those who are connected with the THI Canada group, I personally checked out Jan, Roger and Brandon, and none of them have attachments, entities or demons. None. Canada will always be a target. Why? Because you have a higher percentage of dark witchcraft, mind control, paperclip crew are based there. Negative off-world controllers based in Toronto. Another off-world negative group based in Victoria on the island, and the SSP clowns on Whidley Bay between Vancouver and Seattle. Add in a plethora of program people, alt media or otherwise. All of these groups have wreaked havoc in Canada and on its population. And you must all be aware of that, but I must stress, all must not be in fear either. and all must look after and protect each other. Final piece about the state groups. The leaders and the admins of all groups need to step up and step forward. You know, it is your responsibility to ensure the few basic guidelines are adhered to. Overall, there was about 6 basic ones and a few minor rules had added here and there. And to date, not one group hasn't had a major issue, followed the basic guidelines, or decided to make their own rules up as they go along. You know, there's no excuse now. I did 2 Zooms explaining it, because the people didn't listen or garner what was said from the first one. I've repeated things in shows and clarified things in the shows since, and yet still we're seeing chaos, and it's beyond disappointing. Now I'm being asked to repeat them all again or do a spreadsheet for you. But how about you take responsibility for your own group and sort it all out using the few guidelines given? So because the leaders and admins didn't follow the guidelines, I had to have Holly, Ramona and Alan to help you, and some leaders are just ignoring them. You know, the groups, as I've said, they're your responsibility, not mine, not Holly, not Ramona or Alan. Yours. And perhaps you're not recognising the fact that you are representing your state or country on behalf of we the people, not me. And people seem unable to correlate basic guidelines and implement them. You know, to date, firstly, every basic guideline or a few additional ones for clarity has been misinterpreted, broken or ignored, I'm hearing from the admins. And I do not want to hear from different states and countries in private messages that they're doing it right. But sometimes I feel like I speak in a completely different language. Everything was laid out for you in a very basic way, and yet here we are, 4.5 months down the line, and people in general are not following the basic principles of it. Like I said, they're not my groups, they're your groups. And you need to look after them and implement them in the correct manner, much better than currently it would seem. This was sent in fact, the next 2 small pieces before we have a music break and then go into a very short news section. This was sent in a poem by one of the members from my hometown. And I thought, well, perhaps you'll like it. Need before greed, you'll hear THI say. Service to self was never the way. Look where it got us, humanity lost. Signing over our sovereignty was too high a cost. The true power structure, unknown for thousands of years, harvesting souls by controlling our fears. Fears driven and drilled into our modern day. Current see the thing that helped us stay blind. Trading our life force for paper, what an ingenious scam, like taking candy from a baby secured in their pram. Stroller for Americans. But then waves sent from source came thick and fast. Wake up, my children, this phase has now passed. With consciousness rising and laws from up high above, THI took the airways like a wings of a dove. All have been lied to, all are at fault, and all have suffered for the keys to the vault. Oops, said Thomas, this will never do. Kim came a-calling, and together they knew. It's now time for the souls created by Source to lead the way for the earth without violence or force. Compassion, love and forgiveness for ourselves and for all. Universal law rules, and we must heed the call. all of Earth's resources are now ready for a manner world thrust. We step up as a leader collective, and in source love do we trust. Thanks, Tony, for that. Somebody else posted this. This will become more prevalent as the show develops. A sign posted on the cosmic bulletin board that said, "Wanted, humans interested in rebuilding and maintaining planet Earth as an example and actuality for what is lovingly possible for the entire universe to witness. The source of life is hiring. Apply within yourselves. Appointments accepted and acknowledged 24/7, 365, always and everywhere." We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. I hope there is a better way, as we'll find out in the intel. Right, we're going to go into news now. There's only 4 or 5 pieces, and then I'll see if I can rattle some Q&A off, and then sub-intel, and then the main intel. Right, President Trump has on multiple occasions discussed trying to buy the country of Greenland, according to a report last week, and Trump has, with varying degrees of seriousness, expressed an interest in trying to purchase the 811,000 square mile island in the North Atlantic. Now, citing unnamed sources familiar with the deliberations, Trump reportedly told advisors in one exchange last spring he'd heard that Denmark was having financial problems because of the subsidies it pays to Greenland, and wondered if he should buy it. Now, Greenland is in an autonomous Danish territory currently, and Trump spoke out and says, "What do you guys think about that? Do you think it would work?" Yeah, and whilst it's unclear what the price tag for the country would be, or whether Denmark would consider selling it, they won't. The United States has previously tried to buy the strategically, which is the key word, located country, which has a population of just over 50,000. And President Harry S. Truman offered to purchase it for $100 million back in 1946, but Denmark declined the offer. And also added that the US had also looked into acquiring the country back in 1867. We'll have more on Greenland later. The US Environmental Protection Agency has withdrawn support for so-called cyanide bombs, dear me, which are used to kill predators of livestock. The use of the deadly devices known as M44s began in the 1960s and was reauthorized by the agency in June, sparking a new backlash. Now, M44s have been known to harm humans and kill endangered wild species that are not considered pests to ranchers. And they work by drawing animals with bait and then spraying the poison into their mouths, according to the EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler. And he said the issue warrants further analysis and additional discussions in order to ensure US livestock remain well protected from dangerous predators, while simultaneously minimizing off-target impacts on both humans and non-predatory animals. Now, these bombs are meant to kill coyotes, foxes and other animals that prey on livestock, but the EPA has acknowledged it had also killed hundreds of unintended targets. Unbelievable. Where are we next? Funny enough, Denmark again. Don't often mention that country, and twice in in the same week. Now, the article said for Americans accustomed to paying 4 or 5% mortgage rates, let alone the double-digit figures consumers endured in the early 1980s, there's a new loan in Denmark's Jyske Bank, spelled Jyske, might seem absolutely inconceivable. The Danish lender last week started offering home buyers 10-year mortgages at an interest rate of negative 0.5%. That means borrowers over a decade will pay back a little less than the amount borrowed, not including one-time fees. Now, this highly unusual condition may be good for Danish home buyers, but economists say it's an alarming sign for the global economy. We will hear more on that later. Several major governments and more than 1,000 big companies in Europe are now able to effectively borrow from global financial markets at a negative interest rate. Now, for Jyske Bank, that means it can turn around and lend money at sub-zero interest rates too. And the amount of this type of debt issued as government or corporate bonds, which is an IOU, in other words, it's going to be passed off onto the people, has doubled since December. No surprise there for those of you who have long memories of our Intel. And it now totals $15 trillion. Now, the sudden increase suggests that a fast-rising share of investors are so nervous about the future they're willing to actually lose a little money by lending it to a borrower that is almost certain to pay it back, rather than risk betting on something that could go bust. In a healthy economy, investors will put their money to work in profit-making ventures such as factories or office buildings. Are you getting the gist of that message? I hope you do. Russia and China warned Tuesday that a new US missile test had heightened military tensions and risked sparking an arms race weeks after Washington ripped up a Cold War era weapons pact with Moscow. Now, the US and Russia ditched the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty this month after accusing each other of violating the accord. And Washington said the agreement also tied its hands in dealing with the other powers such as China, and the US Department of Defense announced on Monday it had tested a type of ground-launched missile that was banned under the 1987 INF agreement, which essentially limited the use of nuclear and conventional medium-range weapons. Now, the US has obviously taken a course towards escalation of military tensions, and we won't react to provocations, according to Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov. And he also stated we will not allow ourselves to get drawn into a costly arms race. Final piece of news before Q&A. President Trump on Tuesday signed a presidential memorandum outlining new procedures to launch nuclear power systems into outer space. Trump directed the Department of Transportation to issue public guidelines within a year for commercial companies seeking a license to launch spacecraft with nuclear systems. And the memorandum also gives NASA 180 days to create an interagency nuclear safety review board to ensure the safety of launching radioisotope power systems, fusion reactors used for power and propulsion, and more. Oh dear. You know, you've got to smack your head with this level of stupidity. NASA, never a straight answer and Trump's asking them to finalise something in 6 months. Oh dear, like that's going to work. But the problem is, we cannot guarantee nuclear safety on the ground. Never mind launching on rockets, which have a failing rate of 1 in every 15 launches. Every 15 launches, one of those rockets fails. We don't need nuclear power, nuclear energy, or nuclear weaponry for anything on an adult-based planet. And the sooner these childlike thinking people in power realise that, the better it's going to be for everyone. It's bordering on ridiculous. Let's get into some Q&A, and we haven't done that for a while. I'll see what I can pull out. It is random. There are a load of questions from previous weeks that I will eventually get through, so bear with me if I don't answer your question. Are there any countermeasures for directed energy weapons? Not to my knowledge. Those should be space-based, only pointing away from the planet, not towards. Whose station was blown up on the dark side of the moon? No idea. Plus operational. Is there any possibility of returning this planet to its original pristine 3-moon pre-fash condition? We can reverse the desertification of the planet, yes. We can reverse a lot of things. As for the 3 moons, I don't particularly like the 1 moon we've got, being quite honest, given the damage that's caused to humanity and other beings over many thousands of years. Are there any plans? I don't normally discuss plans, but let's see. Afoot projects in the pipeline to recreate the conditions. Well, like I said, we have the technology and the wherewithal to change the deserts back to the oasis that they once were. The moons are not coming back. Neither do we want them. Not at this time, anyway. I suspect or expect that such an undertaking would be dependent upon humanity clearing up our act, absolutely, and in a fit state to not muck it up going forward. Again, absolutely. We have to get our act together, as will become clear later on. With us being tasked with offering suggestions and or creating a new tax structure, would we need the relevant data on what it takes to operate currently? The new tax structure has already been done. It was done by Kim, I and the team last autumn, and was filed as a bill in January. So that's already been done. We await. Thomas mentioned that those with buzzing in their ears will have noticed the volume increase. Yes, I did. My electric static buzzing sound is louder. What is it caused by, and can we expect more bumps in the volume? It's the frequency coming in, particularly in the right ear. The left ear is more what I would describe as downloads, but the right ear, given the frequencies of the past month, or the frequency increase, people may have noticed. Not all. And that's not something to worry about if you hear it or you don't either. So, if you have people like Malema in South Africa arranging killings of the farmers behind the scenes, can we report them to the Galactic Council? We've had this question several times. No. Why? Because it's a human-to-human problem. You know, the Galactic Council are not there to fix our problems. You know, the problem is us. It really is. If sufficient people rose up in South Africa and says, we're not accepting this, no matter what colour you are, the problem ends. But it's always somebody else's issue, and someone else has to fix it. Now, if people are being killed in your community, it's up to the whole community to come together and to stop it. Make the government tell the government, we're not accepting your type of violence, or whoever else is involved in it. But we can't keep asking galactic councils, because that's just essentially asking to be parented again. We've had enough of that. We have to stand on our own 2 feet. So, no is the answer to that question. Are beings that maintain the simulation the reason for some of the fun and games on humanity? There is no simulation. It's an illusion. The only ones that are in a simulation is the ones that believe they are. Everybody else are not. Are we for time? Okay. As being relatively new to this group and having my mind stretched and eyes opened in ways I could never imagine, and confused about who what Trump is, I've read reference to him being a white hat, but really, if there's a past episode that would answer this, please point the way. At the end of the day, and I've said this all along, if Trump does the right thing for and by the people, I will support him. If he's not, like evidence of nuclear spacecraft, which is beyond ridiculous, then I will call it out. The reality is we cannot trust any politician. History tells you that. Until we see evidence that a certain politician or a certain group of politicians is prepared to operate for and by the people. And that trust has to be earned over time. And so, is he a white hat? I don't know. There'll be more on Trump later. The Draco are depicted in reliefs in just about every form, including humans, but very rarely in their own form. Why is this? So they don't get discovered, is why. You have mentioned that people sold their souls and they are contained in the quantum system. It would be interesting to hear more about that aspect. And do you care to share any more details about the people who did that and what they got out of it? And care to name some names? As regards as naming names, most of the famed people are part of it. Do I know individual ones? Not necessarily. Over time, some of those will be returned. Some of them are far too damaged to be returned. They will go back to source. That is how I understand it and how it was relayed to me. Where are we next? What is the political and evolutional relationship between the Greys and the Draco? The Greys were slaves. All of them. What is the status of the Greys if the Draco Queen is legit, a positive thing, and the Mantid are standing down? The status is they are now free, same as us. They're just as pleased as we are. Did the Greys get pinched off existence when the timelines emerged? It depends on which Greys you're referencing. There are several. Just read a frightening article off Facebook. A Canadian woman described how a company called One World Order is busy installing onto existing 5G towers directed energy weapon robot devices that link directly into mains electricity. According to her, it's only happening in the largest 100 cities. The owners of the company is no surprise, Bowers, which is Rothschild. And if this is correct, it seems Agenda 21 hasn't died a natural death, and the intention is to French fry the inhabitants of these cities just like California, but on steroids. Is there anything you have heard about it, and should we consider this information as a warning? It depends on who said it. I've not heard that at all. Like I mentioned earlier about issues in Canada, there's an awful lot of programmed alt media entities that have no idea what they're saying. They're just reading out scripts. Most of it fear-based. Agenda 21, that's not happening. That's not happening. Or 2030 either. Where are we next? A couple more. What's your take on the Emerald Tablets of Thoth? I did read them a while ago. There's some interesting bits that we can garner information that would be beneficial to us, but you have to remember it's their story. Like the Bible, it's their story, not ours. And so the victors write their story, but there is some things that can be garnered from it that can give people a better understanding of what went on. Thomas, confirmed by one of our California group members, they are mining Paradise, California area for gold. Is this too late? Too little, too late to keep the clowns in the game? Yeah. And this is what we warned of why they did it. Back last year, the SSP were the ones that set the fires. They also created the earthquake in Alaska. And yeah, we've got those same clowns doing that conference that I mentioned earlier this week, who are advocates for the SSP. Like I said, no one questions those type of people, do they? Funny, right? What impact does music have on soul development? It can do a lot. Should I be concerned with my love affair of heavy metal? Well, it's never bothered me too much. Although I do listen to other music. I think there's elements of the heavy metal. There's a lot of variants. I like the rock ballads type. Like the Stargazer and the Whitesnake and the Rainbow. Rock ballads in Aerosmith. With Dream On and Dio, with some of his rock ballads, Guns N' Roses, November Rain, Estranged, rather than the heavy ass stuff that comes out of Metallica, apart from that one album. Thrash metal, death metal, no thanks. It's not for me. But yes, it appears that the classical music has most effect on soul development. And if you play classical music to an unborn child. It makes them develop faster, as I understand. And calmer. You mentioned keeping cash on hand as of late due to the instability of banks. Yes, that is a must. What are your thoughts on gold and silver? Well, gold and silver is the only real money on this planet. The pieces of paper are not real. They're classed as real, but they're not. So yes, keep all the gold and silver also. One more, maybe not. Regarding the patents, I'm under the impression that Serco, owned by the Crown, has them. Well, the Crown's owned by the Trust, so they can think whatever they like. And no, they're not getting their hands on them. And the Trust will release some of them when it's safe to do so. Right, final one. Who is behind Netanyahu's guiding light? Netanyahu's got nothing to do with light ever. He's a psychopath, to be quite honest. You know, and the people of that country need to get him out before he kills more of his own people than others. And quite why Trump is pussyfooting around him is beyond me. Right, let's get into, where are we next? Sub-Intel. President Trump has repeatedly, this is taken from a news item, but I put it in because it's stuff we've covered before and it's further evidence of where they're going and creating division. But according to the news report, has repeatedly refused to accept any responsibility for inciting violence in American communities, dismissing critics who have pointed to his rhetoric as a potential source of inspiration for some of the citizens acting on even long-held beliefs of bigotry and hate. Trump stated, "I think my rhetoric brings people together," he said last week, 4 days after a 21-year-old allegedly posted an anti-immigrant screed online and then allegedly opened fire at a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, killing 22 and injuring dozens of others. So ABC News decided to do a nationwide review and has identified at least 36 criminal cases where Trump was invoked in direct connection with violent acts, threats of violence or allegations of assault. Now, ABC then did a review and could not find a single criminal case filed in federal or state court where an act of violence or threat was made in the name of Barack Obama or George W. Bush. Really? Oh dear. It boggles the mind. They're going full throttle on this. It's all divide and conquer. Now, the 36 cases identified by ABC News are remarkable in that a link to the president is captured in the court documents and police statements under the penalty of perjury or contempt, and in many cases of assault or threat, charges are never filed, perpetrators are never identified, or the incident is never even reported to authorities. And most criminal acts committed by Trump supporters or his detractors have nothing to do with the president, which is correct. But in 36 cases, court records and police reports indicated some sort of link. And the perpetrators also and suspects identified in the 36 cases mostly were white men. There you go again. They're still plugging the same racist narrative that bears no resemblance to reality that I see. Remember the piece last week of violence against the other races or the other colours? It doesn't stack up. 2 of the 3 groups attack their own colour more than anybody else. It was only the Hispanics that don't. So none of it fits their narrative whatsoever. But they'll carry on, keep pushing it, and hoping the people buy it. Now the problem we have is, as we know, most people will not think for themselves and will run with the headline that they provided for them. And this is why they don't like this show too much, because we point out the anomalies and the bullshit in their narrative, and that's all it is. Last week, this was going to go in last week, but again, it's the same issue. The case of accountability for one, but not others. Now, the House Homeland Security Committee last week subpoenaed the owner of 8chan, the internet messaging board linked to 3 mass shootings. Really? See, the same as the previous article, how they're just linking it to fit a narrative. To testify before Congress House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Benny Thompson, Democrat, no surprise, and also ranking member Mike Rogers, Republican, issued the subpoena of Jim Watkins in order to support its ongoing probe into extremist content online. And today the Committee on Homeland Security issued the subpoena to Jim Watkins, the owner of the website 8chan, and the leaders of the committee, which had partial jurisdiction over the issue of domestic terrorism, said in a statement at least 3 acts of deadly white supremacist extremist violence have been linked to 8chan in the last 6 months. We have questions on what is being done to counter this trend so we can be sure it is being properly addressed according to Homeland Security, and receiving testimony from Mr. Watkins is critical to our oversight on this matter. So the gist of this is 8chan is the latest to fall foul of the authorities. The same authorities and people who are allowed to call the president racist, sexist, white supremacist, pedophile, philanderer, and not to mention the Pelosi-led threat of the bombing of the Capitol building in January, and the list goes on, and yet suspiciously no one brings them to account. No one. And this is why the alt media must unite. They're trying to paste us all as white supremacists, extremists. The figures don't stack up. They just don't. When 84% of white violence is committed against white people, those figures don't stack, do they? Now, US Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib has rejected Israel's offer to allow her to make a humanitarian visit to her grandmother in the occupied West Bank. Ms. Tlaib said that she could not comply with oppressive conditions being imposed. Now, she's a critic of Israel's policy towards the Palestinians, and she had been blocked by Israel from making an official visit. But it said a private visit could go ahead if she agreed to, quote, not promote the boycott of Israel during her stay. And Ms. Tlaib and fellow Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar had originally been due to make an official visit to the West Bank and also East Jerusalem last Sunday. Now, under pressure from US President Donald Trump, Israel denied permission for the visit to the territory it controls. I've got no idea whether Trump's playing a game here or whether he's actively in the pocket of the Zionist group. Either way, it doesn't look good for America. You know, we were promised he would look after America, and yet the evidence each week stacks up is Israel appears to come first, does it not? This has to be corrected. Piece out of the UK, and there's much concern about the size of Britain's armed forces, which has fallen for the 9th consecutive year, according to new Ministry of Defence figures. The Army, the RAF, which is the Royal Air Force, and the Royal Navy have all seen a decline in the number of fully trained personnel, with the Army experienced the biggest fall. Now, Labour said, the Labour Party said the government was running down the UK military and calling it a crisis, forgetting that Labour was in charge part of those 9 years. And what did they do about it? Nothing. This is the problem, you see. They're calling it a crisis in recruitment and retention, and the Ministry of Defence says the armed forces continue to meet all their operational requirements. Now, the latest figures showed that the Army was more than 7,000 troops short of the government's target of 82,000. In July, there were 74,440 full-time and fully trained troops, which was down from 76,880 last year. The RAF total stood at 29,930 of the required 31,840, while the Royal Navy and Royal Marines dropped to 29,000 from the required 30,600. So the latest data showed 13,500 people had joined the regular armed forces in the last 12 months, which was an increase of 1,593 compared to the previous year. However, near 15,000 people also left, which was up from the previous year also. The issue here is NATO, plus the fact that we've got American troops all over Europe, including 51,000 in Germany, and over 200,000 American soldiers deployed in 177 different countries, with over 800 bases, at a cost to the American public of over $100 billion per year. $2.2 million soldiers are employed by the American people. Yet again, we are paying for the price for something that the country or the people gain absolutely nothing from. 51,000 in Germany, and they've not got their own military. The UK, France and Germany are all reducing their armed forces. Why? Because they're being protected by Americans at our expense. That's what's going on. And yet again, that is not looking after America or Americans first, is it? Now, the reason it's being wound down, and others in Europe, is so those countries will have no defence when NATO will attempt to launch war on you. Is why. NATO is run by the Rothschild goons. All of it. And they're asking every European country to fund it. Don't, because they will attack you. That's how they operate. Given some of the things we said about Mr. Trump, apparently it's not just this show, and some people having doubts, because 6 in 10 Americans disapprove of Mr. Trump's overall performance. according to a new poll released today, which finds some support for the President's handling of the US economy, but gives him weak marks on other major issues. Just 36% of Americans approve of the way Trump is handling his job as the President, and 62% disapprove. The figures are there. But this is what happens, Mr. Trump, when you ignore all attempts to not only guarantee you another 4 years, that's a given, but start to rebuild this country from the ground up. The FEMA replacement money was ignored. The Treasury head, Mnuchin, still not fired. The Federal Reserve still not dismantled. The IRS still not brought to task, and failed to rein in the treasonous media, and still allowing the corrupt Hillary and several others to walk amongst us. MAGA, when all we are seeing is MIGA, make Israel great again, to be the more prevalent move. The new tax implementation we gave him, we're still waiting. Funding for the people and the projects, not dealt with. American sovereignty still sitting on his desk 19 months later. So if you want to know why your ratings are low, Mr. Trump, there you have it in a nutshell. 1 or 2 years to clear out the clutter is understandable. We are 3/4 of the way through year 3, and nothing tangible has changed, in my opinion. Or it seems the American public. A couple of issues cropped up in the past week, which we did warn about. Travel has got delayed at several US airports due to a computer issue affecting the country's custom agency. The US Customs Border Patrol said it was experiencing a temporary outage with processing systems, and added that the CBP would be using alternative procedures until the unexplained problem was resolved. There was long queues in at least 4 states. Los Angeles Airport reported heavy delays, and that they were processing passengers manually as a result of the outage. And issues with custom checks have also been reported in Seattle, Philadelphia, San Francisco, JFK Airport and Dulles. More power outages in the northeast of the country this week. They are increasing, and they will get worse, as warned. Take note, not just this. After 14 months of bickering, Italy's government collapsed on Tuesday, plunging the European nation, already hobbled by financial fragility and political chaos, into a renewed period of crisis and uncertainty. The chaos you are seeing in the group, the world of politics, and in general, was expected at this time, and it will get way worse. The shakeout is unfolding in front of you, and many will not survive this time period unscathed. Now, through the middle of September, this will escalate on all levels. Step back and away from their chaos. Stand strong within yourself, and do not allow others to lower your mood or vibration. Those people have had long enough to correct themselves. Focus on what's really important, not drivel. But the propensity of humanity is waiting for the external to fix their ills. It never worked in the past and will not work now. There is no saviour. It was always you. Accept it and act accordingly. We'll be back shortly with the intel. Hi all, and welcome back to the intel portion of tonight's show. You may need bigger ears, Lee. Right, here goes. Meetings have took place all around the world on all levels this past week. Many are not happy of what is unfolding. Many are understanding what we have warned about. And many realising they've been lied to and the shit is really about to unfold. Many of their minions have now turned on the Rothschilds for not delivering, including the big banks. All of which stupidly sent the money to the Rothschilds' fake Chinese Elders Fund with no return. But isn't it odd that they are supposed to have all these funds to deliver the RV, but they require banks and governments to send them funds to keep going? And those clowns like Putin and Mnuchin send it to them. It defies belief and logic. The banks have been stealing from the people's current accounts, as we warned they would do. And yet no one stops and thinks to question it. It's funny that, given how accountable the Manor World Holding Trust and to a lesser degree THI are held accountable to everything. The Rothschilds last week turned around to all of them and said, okay, all of you come up with an alternative plan then. That was why all the meetings were called. Make of that what you will and the implications of it. I will reveal more further in this section. This past week, a group connected with NATO, no surprise, in league with Jamie Dimon of Chase, the CEO of TD Bank and the CEO of Royal Bank of Canada, contacted us with haste in this past week, warning of a catastrophic consequence of the banking system as $220 trillion of derivatives is about to explode into the public arena. Yes, with a T. 220 followed by 12 zeros. All the major banks have substantial deficits. I have seen the actual figures myself with my own eyes. Chase is 43 trillion. Morgan Stanley, which is a derivative, pardon the pun, of Chase, 29 trillion. Bank of America, 29 trillion. And all the others facing severe deficits. Significantly, all the investor or broker types like Schwab, etc., never revealed any of their figures. Again, make of that what you will. Now, we were asked to fix it. No chance of fixing it. That is 2 years global GDP. That means the amount everyone around the world spends in a year. 2 years of it. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Because the investors and the brokers are probably similar or more, which is why they wouldn't reveal their figures. But what is more, why should we? Why should we fix the banks? The FDIC is owned by the trust now, so that won't be bailing them out either. You know, These entities got bailed out with public money a decade ago. And what did they do? They charged the public extra fees everywhere. Interest rates went up, so we paid it all back of what we gave them. At this point, and this is my opinion, all banks need to go down and we start again. Well, here's the kicker, is many people may lose all of their deposits with it. That's what you have to be aware of. When those deposits will be returned is anyone's guess at this point, or whether they will ever be returned is another possibility. No one who listens to this show or in our group can turn around and say you were not warned of the failing banking institutes and the consequences thereof. Update report on the 39 species below our feet. They have had several meetings also between themselves, and old wounds and fighting amongst them are being mended, healed and dealt with. So much so now they are trading with each other and setting up meetings of how all can help each other with their daily needs or their requirements, be it food, technology or general help. To me, that's absolutely wonderful to hear. An example of how things can be overcome with a bit of effort, flexibility and a willingness to fix things no matter what the odds were against it. Final piece, which is fairly long, of the intel. And people will need to listen very closely to this piece. It is in the intel section for a reason. I've had several complaints, including Kim, recently of why give the order 1/3? Why give the banks anything? Why fund the banks? Forgetting the fact that it's we the people who fund the banks currently. And yet we still have people that bank at Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, HSBC, Barclays et al. Or why is Kim or I in our positions? Why do you speak for me? And several other accusatory style statements, and yet when asked what the questioner or statement maker has done or what are their solutions, you get complete crickets. This has been a long-standing problem on this planet, because what happens when you don't take responsibility for your life, somebody else will ultimately decide it for you. And what is worse is most people actively dissolve their responsibility in life and ask the government to fix and run their life for them. And then every 4 years lie to themselves and think this president will fix your life. It's absolutely ridiculous in an overview look. And I don't care who that upsets. The truth hurts. The reason it hurts is because you didn't face or deal with it. When I asked people not to react to the 1/3 deal and explained some of the scenarios of the consequences, people still jumped at that headline. That is a non-thinking process. The same applies to the survey in that show. Most went with their own free will choice and picked 1 to 3. Maybe 1 or 2 picked option 4. Then when I revealed the results, it was suggested by some I had played a trick on them not stating what option 4 was. No. You jumped to the answers that were given to you and ignored the one that wasn't. It's common, and we have to change that. So what you did in essence was run with the narrative that was provided and not think for yourselves. This is the key. And this is humanity's biggest problem, and why their programming works on you. Critical and future thinkers bypass their programming and stand in our own sovereign choice. Like the last election was, do I pick Trump or Hillary? Bypassing, you have your own choice, not theirs. I get projected at a lot because I point out or trigger areas where people need to work on themselves. Some don't like it because they've lied to themselves, that they are further on than they actually thought. They don't need to do inner or shadow work, I hear from quite a few say. The reality is those people need to do a lot more work than those who have. But that's their choice. The problem is they have to do that themselves, and that's what bothers so many. Inner and shadow work does not have a beginning or an end. It's a constant process in this and future lifetimes. So why is this in the intel portion? Put simply, most are just not grasping what is unfolding here and now. Not some future event. Now. The intel just mentioned above. It's not the first time you've heard it concerning banks. Which saddens me in many ways. I've done a lot to prepare you all. This is the most crucial time period in this planet's history for humanity. And many are just glossing over it and talking out of their asses about banal things that have no relevance, and seemingly focusing on anything and everything to not face up to what is your responsibility. Fixing this planet. I'm struggling to see the urgency and the focus required, or the gravity of what is unfolding here and now. The current global situation is in utter chaos, and it will only get worse, much worse. And yet the focus in general is all over the place, literally and figuratively. So I will spell it all out again, and I hope people finally grasp the enormity of what is going on now. 1. We're all still alive, which is staggeringly overlooked and not even seen as an event. 2. The former control system top 3 layers, including the wheel within the wheel within the wheel within the wheel, have all been decimated and will not be coming back. 3. The lower minions, including Illuminati, factions, royals, families, etc., are decimating each other and within, and they will not recover either. 4. The control system no longer has control of the trust, the banks, and the various slush funds attached to them either. They won't be getting that back either. 5. Banks, all of them, in every country, no longer have enough money to pay people's current account balances. Yes, you heard that right. 6. There is no longer interference from on, off, or in world. 7. Many people are turning on the Rothschilds for not delivering, and so he challenged them to come up with a new plan. 8. Several meetings on all levels took place over the past week, none of them have a plan. That is the background of what has unfolded. Whilst most slept or focused on wrong things, a very few took on the system and prevailed to give you an opportunity to build a new world. The People's Club and the groups was launched for we the people to provide a plan. And what happened? The people have argued, questioned, denigrated it, and to date failed to come up with a plan. Let's wait for Thomas or Kim to give us a plan. So where are we now? I will make things very clear for people who don't listen clearly or think enough. The cabal have no plan. I will repeat that again. The cabal have no plan. We the people have no plan. Again, we the people have no plan. What happens when no one has any plans with a looming bank and market collapse? Pandemonium is what? So the people who like fear porn, there you have it in bucket loads. Except this is not fear porn. This is reality, folks, in its rawest form. Neither the cabal or the people have a plan. Are you grasping that yet? Do you grasp the consequences of it? The world is going to hell in a handbasket, and all people can do is project at me. But what have you done? Many in our group have done a lot and at least tried to help, but there are others who sit there and wait, passing their responsibility on to others, hiding in private messages, chatting shit, criticising, and generally doing nothing to help the situation. Like I've said all along, you don't like me or you don't like Kim, fine. Because it's not about me or Kim, is it? This is about you, all of you. And too many don't get it. It's about your family, your children, your grandchildren, your home, your country, your planet, and our species' existence. Something far too many just overlook. As that means they have to do something. And therein lies the problem, is it not? It is a problem humanity has faced many, many times. They ignored the teachers of the past. They allowed them to be killed off, dismissed them as mavericks, sold out our species for fame, status and wealth. And then people say, but we never have our say, Thomas. You have had your say since 2013, January the 1st to be precise. And what have you done with it? Most have done what humanity has always done. Ignored it, because someone else will always fix it. And this is what we are facing currently, a total global collapse. Kim and the Trust gave the people their first genuine opportunity in history to mould a world in our image, and what did we get in return? People squabbling over who's the leader, questioning why we're asking for skill sets, calling it a cult, bickering in almost every group, including some with only 2 members in it. And that is the general overview of what we've got in return from the people. But it's not only me recently has warned you. Kim did it in a post and also appeared on the show recently. Randy and Alan warned you on the same show and their own recent podcasts. Michelle and Chloe in their podcast warned you of the same in different ways. Like I said, there are no excuses anymore. None. The THI state and country groups have replicated the world of politics, has it not? Like I said last week, we're not so different. The same lack of focus, the same lack of caring, direction or willingness to correct issues, and the same propensity to delve into the drama of he said, she said, as the country or world collapses around them. The world is about to go into a full meltdown, and some think this is all some sort of social media game or enhance their bank balance or status. That is not an example of thinking or acting different, is it? Humanity have had everything put on a plate for you all to step up. Almost every conceivable restriction or technology that hampered you has been removed. The energy harvesting system stopped in its track, and still the masses just sit there whining about 5G, CERN, global warming or some other fear porn statement, we're all going to die. You want to know the reality? Many will. And no, I'm not laughing this time. There has been several pieces in several shows for you all to get a grasp of what is unfolding. There are no excuses whatsoever. It was your responsibility to act on them, not mine. I gave you the knowledge and the tools to change. There is no cabal anymore. I'll repeat that again. There is no cabal anymore. There hasn't been for a few years now. What is left of what was the cabal is a small collection of deluded clowns with dwindling wealth, illusion of power, illusion of control, and no plan. And we the people have done what to take advantage of their downfall? Nothing. To the very few who have, thank you. There is no cabal now, but we the people are proven they didn't need to control or damage us. The reality is we do it to each other. You've all witnessed the behaviour this past week or months. We do it to each other. There is no cabal. Writing on social media, this person is this, that and the other, and heaven forbid if one or a few people try to help you, you get labelled a cult, fraudster, con woman or various other unpleasant names. And they think they're solving the world's problems by doing that. They haven't even solved themselves. Only humanity can win against all the odds, be given a platform to step away from control systems and slavery, and then contrive to throw it away based on envy, laziness, bitterness, lack of focus and service to self attitude. We're throwing away our last opportunity currently. And in the meantime, proving that Draco and Cassandra right. We're incapable of looking after ourselves in a dignified manner. And that is the exact reason why they have always felt and believed they have the right to look after us, because we are incapable. Let me make things abundantly clear. There is no get out of jail free card with a planetary reset and a cheat of go back to source and get a new vessel. Not this time. This is it. This is your final opportunity. Don't believe me? Fine. Just carry on and watch it all unfold. It will get horrendously ugly. And that's not a guess or an assumption, but a fact. Some will go on and retain their spirit or essence. Those people will be very few on this planet, a few thousand at best at the current rate. The rest will not survive. This is it. We can change it all by changing ourselves and helping others. But the final countdown to the very few is underway. Take it or leave it. It's your choice. Kim and I have done our part. What happens next is down to you. Hi all and welcome back. I imagine that was fairly sobering to many. It should be. It's not a game. This is about all our lives. There's a couple of lines in that song, the last one. Go and read the lyrics of the first song. Listen. Look, the last song, never cared for what they say. I don't care what Cabal say, or what anybody else says for that matter. Never cared for games they play, or that either. I don't care what they do. I never care for what they know. They know less than they thought they did. Why do I not care? Because it's not what they do that counts as what. It's what we do. Not them. 1% running the whole planet while 99 do nothing. That's why we are the problem. What they do doesn't matter. It never did. We are their platform. They perform because we allow them to. They're still in power when they have none. Why? Because the people haven't done enough. There is no cabal anymore. We can't blame that anymore. It's gone. It's been smashed to smithereens, and we're still sitting here. So it matters not what they do, say, games they play. What matters is what we do. They never mattered. That's what people don't get. What matters is what we do. The last two lines. Forever trust in who we are. Because nothing else matters. And when people grasp that, we will step forward in a lot better fashion than we have currently. Mentioned Greenland. It came up in the news again with Trump expressing an interest in buying the island for America. All too predictable in my opinion. I don't think it's America buying it. I think it's NATO. Another base for attack Russia. That's all they're interested in. But Greenland is a fascinating name and place for that matter. Not much is ever stated about it, except it's owned by Denmark, who apparently have stated this week in no uncertain terms it's not for sale. And yet they allow an American military base on their island. Always a recipe for disaster, that. So it's called Greenland, and yet it's covered in ice from north to south of the whole island, which makes absolutely no sense, since the south of the island is part of the jet stream, which makes the UK have warmer climate than it should do for its northerly region, and yet it doesn't in Greenland, which it passes first. The question I have, is the ice real? Now, Richard Hoagland said he had flown over it and stated it was full of ice, and yet there is more melted ice in the north of the island than the south of the island. Does that make sense? And yes, the ice in the Arctic region is melting in original locations. But what they won't tell you is it is increasing in many other regions, including Antarctica. Why? Because the planet's tilted. The shift is underway, and no, it won't be catastrophic. The only reason for catastrophe on this planet is if we the people do nothing. Now, Greenland it is suspected, certainly part of it, was part of the sister islands of the old continent of the Aria, along with Thule Island, Iceland as well. Funny enough, Iceland, which is green, but Greenland, which is ice. You know. Now, the main part of the Aria was north of the modern-day Siberia. But remember, 110,000 years ago, Siberia was not in the same place. Now, I suspect, well, I don't suspect, I know, there's far more under the ice, or whatever it is that covers Greenland, than meets the eye, or perhaps our understanding of certain technology. And the SS small p, along with other goons, wants a piece of it. My own personal opinion is no island should belong to any other country except their own. So in the future, I would like to see all islands become autonomous. You know, the reality is, whole islands are destroyed for one purpose only. Strategic military purposes is why. That's all. Like Guam and Hawaii. They come in suggesting they are saving or protecting them. No, actually, you put those people in more danger, as Hawaii found out to their cost. The Trump and Israel and the entry ban of the politicians was widely criticised, including by AIPAC, believe it or not, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, which is a prominent pro-Israel lobbying group, which we covered in From Russia with Love 6, if memory serves me correctly. Now, isn't it interesting that AIPAC didn't support that tactic? making it out that they're all righteous when history suggests they are a much deeper problem than most in this country are aware of. And it's a classic case of playing both sides. Something that came up, there's a few pondering pieces that came up in the chat today. Many people have criticised me because I've discounted certain things on various shows. But here's the kicker, and perhaps the overriding questions to ponder on. Where are all the people who gained or became the bastions of light and enlightenment by using crystals, organ, stones, ayahuasca, pot, breatharians, shamans and love and light? They've all been doing it since the 1960s. So where are they in leading humanity with all their enlightenment? Where are they teaching their overwhelming enlightenment? And why is half of America overcome with this enlightenment? The proof, they say, is in the pudding, because I'm seeing zero evidence to support any of it. The same applies to white witches, another group espousing enlightenment. Where are they, and what have they done to assist humanity? Again, no evidence to support it. Personally, I wish there was, but the facts state differently. Something else to ponder on. There's been lots of talk of healing machines and healing beds on the internet, and also people asking for replicators. You do realise most machines are replicators already. The healing machines are replicators. You know what they're replicating? You. Funny that. Given we had another question about 5G, there was another one that didn't get asked or answered. But something else to ponder on for all those concerned over 5G. Have you all got rid of your mobile phones yet? If not, why? Nobody has a mobile phone. 5G is a waste of time. Something that came up this week in another survey. 22% of millennials say they don't have any friends, and 25% say they don't even have an acquaintance. Fairly staggering figures, and also fairly sad in many ways. But maybe there's a twist. This was a deliberate program by the system, and can only be overcome by we the people. Our technology has played a big role in this via video games, iPads, iPods, tablets and phones, etc., where people chat on machines rather than engaging. And it has been that way for the best part of 2 decades now. So we have to learn to actually talk to and engage each other again, which is not as easy as people have found out within the THI state groups. And it's something we can all take part in. You know, if you can type on social media, you can pick up the phone, landline or otherwise, and speak to people just as easy. And the THI state and country groups can play a big role in engaging people again, if we get our act together. So that would be the common thought based on what we know. But here comes the Thomas wrecking heads time again. What if those 25% realise subconsciously the rest don't matter? Why? Perhaps they're not the correct frequency to be engaging. But just maybe they also know they're not real. Next item. Jay-Z is now facing criticism for teaming up with the NFL following anger about the body's response to footballer Colin Kaepernick's 2016 kneeling protest. The rap star who once rapped "I said no to the Super Bowl," or Superb Owl, which is the correct term, Moloch, Ra, Cult of Ra, Egypt, Israel. "You need me, I don't need you," he said. And now he's decided that he will help select acts for the Superb Owl halftime show. And the deal is meant to enhance live game experiences and amplify the league's social justice efforts. Social justice, where they ban people for expressing their own opinions. That's not social justice. Kaepernick's girlfriend said Jay-Z has let them use him, which is disgusting, and Kaepernick has been effectively frozen out of the game for what is known as taking a knee during a pre-game national anthem in protest of the treatment of black people in America. And his partner Nessa Diab said the deal had helped to bury her boyfriend, and the NFL said the agreement would nurture and strengthen community through football and music. No, it won't. This is more divide and conquer games. This smacks up to me. And it seems many have forgotten the term free speech in this country. Some will say, but he was dishonouring the flag. I will say, it's not an American flag to begin with. And people need to understand that. Go and check your history. Or the anthem, for that matter, that was written by a Brit, a member of the Crown. But does anyone else, I'm hoping many people notice that most now, if not all, so-called social justice programs only involve one colour, one gender, or some other single entity, and not the all. Again, only we as a collective can correct that. So, I finally made it on to a show with Richard Hoagland last Sunday, rolling into Monday morning. At the third time of asking after the previous two were cancelled. And it was largely a success from the narrative point of view. And yes, I get some are unhappy at my lack of time on the show, and some mentioned about the disruptions, but it is his show, not mine. Richard challenged the narrative, and I do like that. You know, I've never failed to answer a question I have knowledge of unless it involves plans, safety or operational stuff. And that's always been the way. Although I do get our members asking, why is it only to try to get challenged in that way, and others can say what they like unhindered. It's one of life's great mysteries, that. I'm sure most of you will agree. And like I said on the show, one can analyse anyone's material in the alt media closer. You can analyse it in the mainstream media, and their narrative falls apart very quickly. And genuine proof of a lot of the material is often hard to nail down. And that applies to all who speak on shows, not just me. But we have garnered many proofs from this show, as over time many have realised, but that takes time to build up that trust. And yet so often we see some new whistleblower show up and people just accept it straight away as fact. And that's where discernment comes in. But overall I was pleased how the show went. I wasn't particularly in the best of health going into that show. So Richard talking a lot actually helped me, so that helped me out a bit. But Richard really liked the info that did come out and has requested the possibility of doing several more shows on his platform, which, if time allows, I will do so. We'll be back shortly. Hi all, and welcome back to going into the final few pieces. A couple of things I'd like to cover. We have a lot of new members and some questions cropped up, so these next two pieces will be kind of a review of where we stand, where we come from and where we're at, and why certain things get said and why certain things get dismissed or whatever. So there's a lot of new people, and some people are thinking that I dismiss a lot of the alt media people and their narrative. NESARA, GESARA, San Germain Trust, collateral accounts, OPPT, birth certificates and the RV. They were all discounted a long time back, long before I joined up with the Manor World Home Trust. Now some think that I have these opinions based on me working with the trust, and I get that, but long-term members will all tell you very different. You know, I did work alongside Neil Keenan on the collateral accounts, but if Drake was honest, he will tell you I doubted it from October 2013 onwards, but was told it was all good and Drake had vetted Neil Keenan, etc. And my admins will confirm that also. But once it got to the end of 2014, I had sufficient knowledge to know who and what that project was for and about. And again, I warned Drake several times, all of which he denied, despite at this point Keenan had cut him off. And Drake used to send me to ask him questions at that point. Most of the collateral accounts is the Hudis, OITC and Keenan et al. Racy Dan was another one. Is to do with stolen gold or other treasures or other assets during wartime that were placed in Indonesia and several other islands connected to the Pindar Marcos, who was rogue, despite what certain alt media characters tell you. Pindars are not there for the benefit of the people, they're there for the Draco. Now, NESARA was a real program, but it was for the Farmers of America refund, not a global payout. Never was. GESARA has no validity whatsoever. The San Germain Trust never existed ever in history. Again, I've seen with my own eyes all the 6,500 trusts. I went through the book and checked off all the names. 6,500 trusts, and not one was named San Germain Trust or anything like it. And all those trusts were in fact slush funds for criminal enterprises for and by the elites. Now it's all rolled into one and they have no access to it and won't be getting it either. As I said, the collateral accounts were based on the Pindar Marcos stealing off every country, and it was a Langley based operation in league with the Black Dragon Group of Asia and America, and the Rothschilds, more commonly known as the Chinese elders. Officially, there are no Chinese elders. It's all fake. Now, OPPT and the birth certificates was another ruse on the people. Seduce them with potential payouts, what was it, 6 million each or some other banal figure, and they would then take control of the birth certificates. And so it was going to go from one rogue organisation, the Vatican, to another rogue organisation. Thankfully that was stopped, including the recent attempt to reevaluate those birth certificates. And yes, our birth certificates have a lot of value on them, but that value can never be paid out. Never. It would crash the whole economy. Plus, what use is it if everyone becomes multi-millionaires overnight? None whatsoever. And to the generals who listen to this show, please take note of that last statement. Society would collapse. All of you sitting there with your pallets of dinars. It's not happening. Things have to be phased in and phased out. A complete 180 with a society largely based on everyone for themselves would be catastrophic. As for the RV, it was fake to begin with, even ignoring the fact that it was a ruse to distract the global elites initially and then the public. To start that off would require more funds than everyone who has ever lived on this planet and has spent for at least the last 1,000 years. The assets required for that RV are 3 to 4 planets worth. Some asked me to address and make this the final clarity on the Kent Dunn Drake situation or issue that has cropped up. Of course, Kent Dunn has made alarming statements about Kim and myself. But that's Kent Dunn, so this is so we can all move on. I warned Drake that he was total bullshit back in 2014, 15 time, around there. Will Drake admit it? Probably not, as pride gets in the way much of who and what Drake is. And no matter what Drake did to me on the Cosmic Voice show, you all know by now it was wrong on his part, and so does he, deep down. But it has worked out well for us both. Whilst many were upset at what Drake did back in May of 16 and the lies told against us to cover up what was really going on, it didn't sit well with many, and me also. But time moves on. Drake's show went his way, which he felt was not his show anymore, and we created THI and went on a more progressive based show that encompasses many topics, including the self-work, which is the most important. But I, for one, can never understand why Drake went in with Kent Dunn to begin with. Since when does Drake need clowns like Kent Dunn to get his message across? But it's another example of Drake being lured into wrong paths and people. And that even preceded me being part of that show. I don't need to mention the names. Most are familiar with them now. But it was a litany of failed shows, platforms and people with much discord that went on for months in each successive group or connection. I was one of the few who got to see the real Drake. His strengths and his weaknesses, he lets few in. But the man has a big heart, deep down. Below the bravado he projects onto the show, which covers up much of the real Drake. Which is kind of sad in a way. And he does carry a lot of unaddressed guilt, as we all do. And this is why it's key to process it, heal it and let it go. But Drake got led down a merry path by Keenan before I left and also after. And once Keenan and David Wilcock had got him to remove me from that show, they then dumped him like a hot potato. Part of me says, well, you reap what you sow, but the larger part of me feels sad for him. And he is his own worst enemy at times. He knows this deep down. So now he's been burned by Kent Dunn, just like all the others before, except one person. That one person who stood by him despite some of his, shall we say, questionable antics. But the shows have moved on. The difference between his show and ours is one man wants to take on the system direct and challenge it to a duel which will involve violence. The other wants to build our own system that has the all working together. And once that system is built in our image, not theirs, theirs will disappear naturally. One talks of violence, one knows that will never work and is not conducive to harmony, when better solutions are there if enough people commit to it. As for Kent Dunn, to me he's like the male version of Cindy K. Courier. Pulls pieces off the internet, runs with it, makes shit up as they go along. And one has to ask why any of our members bother to listen to these people talking about saviour programs and bullshit with a track record of zero of their predictions, promises or narratives ever coming true. That hour or so listening to clowns like Kent Dunn would be better spent improving the self or working towards solutions to fix the world's problems, would it not? And it's a classic case of not observing where your attention goes, as the case may be. Now, Kent says he's a Pleiadian. Fine. But my experience of Pleiadians is not the glossy woo-woo version portrayed by the New Age style followers all over the internet. The Alcyons, Pleiadians, connected to Cobra, sold this planet out to the Draco for tech many years back. They were the guardians of this planet. And as for the other Pleiadians, let's not forget the Nibiru crew that came from that region also, with their Anunnaki fake gods. Perhaps Kent's one of them. Who knows for certain? But one thing we know for certain is the man is full of bullshit. Period. And I'm glad Drake is away from him, but I will never understand why Drake put himself and his followers in that field to begin with. But that's Drake in a nutshell, whether people love him or not. I know he has far more to offer than he presents, and that is a great sadness to me and many others. We'll be back shortly. The final piece for tonight was posted recently, and I think it's a good time to say it on the show, given what was stated previously of where we're at. And perhaps Lucid Dreamer will put it into its own piece when they return from their vacation. But this is what we can do, providing we all work together. The illiterate for this century will not be like the last century. For those who couldn't read or write, the illiterate for this century will be those who cannot unlearn the lies they have devoured in this and all other centuries. This century will unravel and unveil the lies, deceit and perpetrators of crimes against humanity, and ignorance will be a choice, not a statute or a regulation. law like sense will return to common again, all done in the natural way or natural way. In 2 generations, our children will be walking libraries of real knowledge and truth, immersed in creativity, taught the ancient secrets of self-healing, and set up on a course of mental planes evolution and ultimately cosmic evolution and beyond, so they can become the beacon of progress for our species. In 2 generations, we can replace need, not greed, and put an end to the materialistic debt loop of keeping up with the Joneses in a competitive mindset of people who trample over everything and everyone under a core pirate structure. In 2 generations, we can work and learn from all the different cultures globally in a way that is conducive to all of us. Not under the rule of law, but under the directives of understanding, openness, willing and striven to improve. In 2 generations, we can completely overhaul all the wrongs on this planet, be it people, non-humans or control systems, and set a course not only for the living beings on this planet, but also the planet herself. In 2 generations, we can speak to, work with, learn together and set a blueprint for this universe with all the ETs and NTs that are here, before those who wish to return to their homeworlds. All species working in harmony, not destroying each other, so they can go home and teach their species a better way also. In 2 generations, we can all learn to be harmony with the self, cure the sickness within us of mired in self-doubt, little me, envy, greed, insecurity, weaknesses into strength, the lack of love, caring and sharing, the lack of consideration for others, where people are not defined by labels or chattel numbers or by one individual colour of the spectrum. But we all become the full spectrum of colour, radiating out for all the universe to see, where all are inclusive, not exclusive, on a planet where we create, not destroy, a planet we treasure, not disrespect, a planet of real hope, love, empathy and compassion, with us all exhibiting personal responsibility. A planet we can then truly call home, set in our image, not their image. It will require the input of the all, not just the few. It will require for you all to be more flexible with yourself and with others. It will require you to be in service to others, not just the self. It will require you to expand your consciousness, understanding and mindset to think and act differently. It will require you to focus not on your home, neighbourhood, city and country, but globally. It will require you to ditch your current old vessel riddled with disease and lies and create a new version of you that shines brightly, that learns, teaches, helps and strives for a better world we can all be proud of. Not all of us will see it through to the end of this lifetime. But with the inner war gains we have done, all those who pass on and return to source now have the opportunity to choose to return here one day to witness the fruits of your labour. We all have a duty and obligation, all of us, to create a new world and give the children and subsequent generations a chance to thrive and correct the ills we've all gone along with or helped create. ask less of what your country can do with you, and more of what can I do for my planet and all the living species on, around and inside it. Just because others look like they're winning does not mean you are losing. They can no longer defeat us now. Only we can. I'll repeat that again. They can no longer defeat us now. Only we can do that. And one hopes you all take note of what was said earlier and act upon it. Time is ticking away fast now. Of that you can all see. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name is Thomas Williams.